On with me now is James TURK, founder of goldmoney.com. Who knows, the way things are going now, he may one day become the official currency of the world. James, how you doing?
Good, Kerry. How are you?
All right. So it looks like the Chinese curse is upon us, and we are living in interesting times, huh?
Yes, we are indeed. And, we're on another day when gold is getting whacked. But, gold's still up 15, 16% year to date. So it looks like it's going to be another good year for gold, even with this down day today.
Yeah, and how long really can they keep hitting it for? Is it going to last? I mean, that's, it looks like there's inherent strength, and the buyers just step aside, let them do their thing, and then they hop back in, and it pops up pretty quickly after that. And
yeah,
could be
That's exactly right. And there are basically two markets. There's a paper market for gold, and then there's a physical market for gold. And this volatility in the price swings is normally driven by the paper market. And that's when, as you say, the physical buyers start stepping in and picking up the bargains. And, I think that's what's going on right here.
Yeah, I mean, do you know anybody? I mean, you know more people than I do. How many of the people holding gold money are just liquidating their positions in a panic because they think that the gold is a bubble and it's all over, and I got to go run to the safety of fiat currencies?
Yeah, the bubble out there, as you and I have discussed before, is not gold. It's fiat currency and government debt. And, the interesting thing, Kerry, is that we've seen smackdowns like this for a decade now. And it's been my view to, just accumulate gold, view gold to be a form of savings. And, every month on a dollar cost average program, just go ahead and buy some gold, put it away. And, when this bull market in gold and bear market in paper assets is finally finished in a few years' time, you're going to be very happy with all of the gold that you've saved, which you'll then be able to use either to make investments or purchase a consumer good, or, as you would normally use, any savings account. But you can't save money, you can't save dollars anymore and expect that to be preserving your purchasing power, because it's not.
Yeah, and there's this new meme that I think is kind of perpetrated by the elites. They call it a risk-on and a risk-off trade. Now, to me, keeping that money in your mattress, keeping those fiat dollars in your mattress, is about the most risky trade you could ever imagine. If you look at your returns on just cash for the past decade, forget about whether it was in a savings account or whatever, you had large negative returns. On a dollar-weighted average, on a CPI average, it's even worse, and on a shadow stats average. So what is it? Who came up with this risk-on, risk-off trade? It really irritates me.
Yeah, I don't know. The media comes up with different terms like this, and then they get, more and more popular. But, again, you can't really look at this thing from an emotional basis. You have to look at it logic. And gold, in that sense, is just like any other asset. You want to own it when it's undervalued and useful, and you want to get rid of it when it's overvalued and no longer useful. Well, on both of those counts, gold is undervalued by all historical measures. Even though the price is up, it's undervalued because the dollar has been so badly debased. And the second point is that it's still very useful, because being a tangible asset, gold doesn't have counterparty risk. And in a world of collapse of MF Global, which is turning into perhaps as severe in terms of the repercussions as Lehman was back in 2008, it's getting to this stage where you can't really believe the exchanges, you can't really believe the regulators, you can't believe the brokers, because they seem to be playing with other people's money and doing it in a way that's very speculative, as was the case with MF Global. So, tangible assets in this environment make sense, and, gold is the most liquid of all tangible assets.
Yeah, now we're on this whole rehypothecation thing. And when I went to law school, rehypothecation was like you took security, you signed it over to the bank, and they gave you money. And, there's nothing exotic about it, but when you keep use it in a fractional reserve kind of way, and you're borrowing all this money that is off the books that nobody knows you owe, and then all of a sudden you have an MF Global event and it blows up, all of a sudden hypothecation sounds evil. but it's really what they're doing and the whole fractional reserve system that's got the evil in it.
Yeah, it's really just, a house of cards, I guess, is probably the best way to describe it. And that's what the essential nature of a fractional reserve system is. It's, a Ponzi scheme in the sense that as long as people keep paying into the system and don't question it, it will, probably stay up, even though it's pretty shaky. A house of cards being as shaky as it can be, but eventually the house of cards will always fall apart, and that's what's happened here with MF Global, and is having an impact on both sides of the Atlantic, actually.
Yeah, well, it's what I call the three-card Monte economy. It's a shell game because you put your assets with a bank or a financial concern, and you believe that they're your assets, but then they're playing this game, and if you miss the card, if you can't find the black queen, and you're just with a red 2 or a black 2, but you can't find the queen, you're out of luck, man. They just walk away with your money. And what the MF Global, it's more, I think, a symbolic or a symptom of the problem of loss of confidence, rapidly eroding confidence level. Because I think back to my father is like, he fought in World War II. He hated the government, but he believed that the government maybe was a force for good or not necessarily a force for evil. Fast forward 50, 60 years later, we all are scared to death of governments. They're out of control. They're like that thing on Star Trek that would just eat up planets, just devour them for energy and blow them out. And that's what it feels like government's like today.
Yeah, well, your father and my father lived in different times. And it was an entirely different world, a couple generations ago than what we're dealing with today in many respects, societal as well as financial. Yeah,
it's just distressing because people crave security. I think it's in our DNA because, we grew up, we evolved as a species and had all these predators out to get us. So we congregated together. We built towns, cities, increased the technology to basically increase our feeling of well-being and personal physical security. And then when you see that it's all kind of being turned against us by the governments of the world, it's kind of, I'm an optimist at heart, but it really makes you think, well, how much have we really evolved when we've got this predatory system that's, basically out to take all of our wealth and won't be happy until we're totally subservient and, enslaved.
Well, the important thing is there's still time to act, to protect yourself. The writing is on the wall. We saw how Argentina, when it got into a financial push, it confiscated assets in pension plans. Then the same thing happened in Ireland when Ireland collapsed a while ago. And then just a few weeks ago, the same thing happened in Portugal. The Portuguese government took assets out of pension plans. It seems to me that that's probably going to be inevitable in most countries of the world, maybe even the United States, if push comes to shove at some future date. And given the way things are going, it's likely that push will come to shove sooner rather than later.
And then you'll see a revolution of doctors and lawyers, because they're the ones that have got the pension plans. I know so many professionals that that's the only tax shelter they have is to set money aside in their KEO, their 401k, or their IRA, whatever, and they could put a lot of money in. I know people that have millions of dollars in them, and when the government goes for them, then I think it's really game over. I just can't see people just sitting back and taking it. It just it boggles the mind that we're in this era where one of the hallmarks of a civilized society is protection and exalting of property rights, and now we're going into this world where you're just a milk cow. You're just something that produces tax revenue for the government, and they can do with your production, your surplus, what they feel like. It's just interesting times, right?
Yeah, it is. But, that's to be expected when you move into a socialist system. Socialism is you give up your freedom in exchange for, government protection. But essentially, socialism is a dead-end street. I always like to come back to one of my favorite quotes from Margaret Thatcher, who said that the problem with socialism is you eventually run out of other people's money. And, that's exactly what's happening to governments around the world.
I just wrote that in an article yesterday, James. It's so funny that you mention it. They've run out of other people's money. And, you can't point to a successful socialist experiment going back to the Pilgrims and the Mayflower and up to present time. It's never worked. So, if the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, then our leaders need to be let out in straitjackets and given major tranquilizers because they are psychotic.
Yeah, it's not just the leaders, it's the people themselves. I mean, after all, we elect those leaders and put them into office, and yet, look at the path that we're on. So it's not just the leaders, the people also have to shoulder the blame too.
Oh, of course. There was a consent of the governed, and everybody thought, hey, a little bit of socialism, that's okay. Just like a little bit of alcohol is okay. But when it becomes an addiction and it gets pushed beyond the realm, I think the support for the system really is eroding by anybody who is a producer still or was a producer and hopes to become one again. And that's the thing. Like, they might be dependent now. They might be collecting welfare, unemployment benefits, or food stamps, but there's a lot of people that are really disgusted by that dependency, but they have to do it. And I think people need to keep that in mind when, they're thinking about that parasitic class that's living off the host,
Yeah, and I think what we really need to address is, what's happening to the middle class in America, because, that's where the production comes from, that's where the savings comes from, and the middle class is really, it's really being under a lot of pressure. Declining standards of living, money, purchasing power being eroded away. And when you destroy the middle class the way it's being destroyed now, you ultimately are destroying capitalism, because it's the middle class that's the most important component of a capitalist system to work. It's the group of people that produce more than they spend, the balance, of course, being savings, and that savings being plowed back into future investments and activity and production.
And that's called creation of wealth. And unlike what the Obama administration believes, that wealth does not get created by government. Government's the great destroyer of wealth. The individual creates wealth. So, James, on that note, did you ever think that one day you were going to become a central banker to the world after the fiat money system collapsed?
No, definitely not, Kerry. But, one thing that I've always felt is that gold is going to return to its rightful and traditional role at the center of global commerce when all of this financial nonsense and craziness is over.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And hey, thanks for being on, James. Just tell us where we find you, Gold Money, on the internet. And if we have any questions, people can just send them to me at kl@kerrylutz.com. I'll forward them off to you.
That'd be great. Thank you very much, Kerry.
Okay, and we've got a link to your site, goldmoney.com, on kerrylutz.com. So I like Gold Money. It's just so easy to do. And with the click of a mouse, you can be invested.
Thank you, Kerry.
All right. We'll talk to you again soon.